In Coral Springs General Hospital, a 67-year-old widow was about to discover the ultimate betrayal. What started as emergency heart surgery took a shocking turn when she came face to face with financial devastation. Dorothy Castellano wasn't your typical retiree. For 35 years, she had been a cardiac nurse, known for protecting the vulnerable. When she trusted her daughter-in-law Carmen with power of attorney, she had no idea she was walking into calculated theft. Dot's family loyalty would lead to her entire life savings vanishing while she fought for survival. What began as a medical crisis would become a fierce battle for justice that would expose how trust can become the deadliest weapon. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The pain struck Dorothy Castellano like lightning splitting through her chest at 3:17 a.m., jolting her from dreams of Tony's gentle snoring. She clutched the bedsheets, her nursing instincts immediately cataloging the symptoms: crushing pressure, radiating down her left arm, the metallic taste of fear coating her tongue. After 35 years as a cardiac nurse, she knew the signs too well to fool herself. "Not like this," she whispered to the empty bedroom, her voice barely audible over the whir of the ceiling fan. The framed photo of Tony on her nightstand seemed to watch as she reached for her phone with trembling fingers. Even in crisis, Dot's mind remained sharp. She called 911 first, then Carmen. Her daughter-in-law answered on the second ring, voice thick with sleep. "Dot? What's wrong?" "Heart attack. Ambulance coming." Dot's words came in short bursts between waves of searing pain. "Carmen, I need—" "Oh my God. Don't talk. Save your strength. I'm coming right now." The line went dead. Dot let the phone slip from her fingers, her thoughts drifting to the manila envelope in her bedroom drawer, the one containing her power of attorney documents, meticulously prepared after Tony's death. Carmen had been so helpful with all the legal paperwork, so patient with Dot's questions about protecting her assets. "Your family," Carmen had said, tears in her eyes. "I'll always look out for you." The EMTs arrived within 8 minutes, their professional efficiency a comfort to Dot's clinical mind. She recognized the rhythm of emergency care, the practiced questions, the IV line, the concerned murmurs about ST elevation. As they loaded her onto the stretcher, she caught sight of Carmen's Honda Pilot racing into the Coral Springs mobile home park, headlights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. "Mrs. Castellano, we're taking you to Coral Springs General," the lead paramedic said. "Your daughter-in-law can follow us." "She's good girl," Dot managed between oxygen mask breaths. "Loves the kids, loves family." At the hospital, Carmen transformed into a force of nature. She clutched the power of attorney documents against her chest like a shield, her dark hair pulled back hastily, still wearing her pajamas under a hastily thrown-on cardigan. To the medical staff, she was the picture of a devoted daughter-in-law in crisis. "She's been having chest pains for weeks," Carmen told Dr. Rodriguez, the cardiologist. "Too stubborn to see anyone. You know how these older nurses are? They think they know everything." Her voice cracked with what sounded like exhausted worry. Dr. Rodriguez nodded grimly. The EKG results were conclusive. "We need to get her to surgery immediately. The anterior wall shows significant damage. We're looking at a major blockage." "Do whatever you have to do," Carmen said, signing consent forms with practiced efficiency. "Money is no object. She has excellent insurance. And if that's not enough," she gestured to the power of attorney documents, "I can access her accounts. She's been so careful with her savings. Always said it was for emergencies." As they wheeled Dot toward the operating room, Carmen walked alongside the gurney, holding her hand. "You're gonna be fine," she whispered, loud enough for the nurses to hear. "The kids are praying for you. Jake wanted to come, but I told him to stay with Sophia. They love you so much, Dot." Through the haze of pre-surgical medication, Dot squeezed Carmen's hand. Her mind drifted to memories of family dinners, of Carmen helping with Jake's homework, of the way Sophia always ran to Grandma Dot first at family gatherings. She thought of the careful nest egg she and Tony had built, $240,000 in savings and CDs, enough to ensure she'd never be a burden to anyone. "Take care of Michael," Dot whispered as they reached the surgical suite doors. "He needs guidance." Always, Carmen replied, pressing a kiss to Dot's forehead. You just focus on getting better. The operating room blazed with fluorescent intensity. Dr. Rodriguez worked with methodical precision, but the damage was extensive. At 6:42 a.m., the monitors went flat. For 3 minutes and 17 seconds, Dorothy Castellano's heart stopped beating. In the waiting room, Carmen sat with her phone pressed to her ear, tears streaming down her face as she spoke to Lisa in Atlanta. I don't know if she's going to make it. The doctor said, he said it was massive. She kept talking about you kids, about how proud she was. Michael arrived 40 minutes later, his face pale and drawn. He avoided eye contact with the medical staff, instead hovering near the vending machines. When Carmen tried to update him on Dot's condition, he simply nodded and mumbled something about needing coffee. This is killing me, Carmen confided to the charge nurse. She's been like a mother to me, more than my own mother ever was. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. We've been managing all her affairs since Tony died. She trusts us completely. The nurse patted Carmen's shoulder sympathetically. She's lucky to have family who cares so much. Back in the operating room, Dr. Rodriguez fought to restart Dot's heart. Come on, he muttered, adjusting the defibrillator. Don't give up on us now. The shock sent Dot's body arching off the table, once, twice. On the third attempt, the monitor showed the irregular but unmistakable rhythm of life returning. We've got her back, Dr. Rodriguez announced, but she's not out of the woods yet. As Dot's heart found its new rhythm, supported by a network of stents and surgical intervention, her consciousness floated in that liminal space between life and whatever comes after. She dreamed of Tony building their first kitchen table, his weathered hands smooth against the pine wood. She dreamed of Lisa's graduation from law school, the pride burning in her chest as she watched her stepdaughter receive her diploma. She dreamed of Jake's first steps, taken not toward his parents but straight into her arms. And somewhere in the depths of her medically induced sleep, she dreamed of Carmen counting money. In the dream, Carmen's face was different, harder, calculating. But dreams were strange things, Dot's nursing mind rationalized. The mind processed stress in peculiar ways. Miles away, in the pre-dawn quiet of the Castellano household, Carmen's laptop screen glowed blue in the darkness of the home office. She stared at the login page for Dot's online banking, her fingers poised over the keyboard. The power of attorney documents lay spread across the desk beside her, official and binding. Her phone buzzed with a text from the hospital. Patient stable post-surgery. Still critical. Carmen's jaw tightened. She had prepared for either outcome. If Dot survived, Carmen would be the devoted daughter-in-law who had managed everything during the crisis. If Dot didn't, well, the money would already be where it needed to be. She entered Dot's banking password, Michael's birthday, followed by Tony's, and watched as the account balances loaded. $89,000 in checking. $151,000 in savings. Multiple CDs totaling another $87,000. Carmen's breathing steadied as she calculated. Enough to solve everything. Enough to save her marriage, her house, her children's futures. At Coral Springs General Hospital, Dot Castellano's heart beat steadily in the recovery room, monitored by machines that recorded every rhythm. She had survived the surgery, but the real test was just beginning. Her body was healing, but the betrayal that would wound her more deeply than any blocked artery had already begun. Carmen closed the laptop and drove back to the hospital, preparing to resume her role as the perfect daughter-in-law. She would sit by Dot's bedside, hold her hand, and wait for the next opportunity to prove just how much the family could trust her. In the ICU, Dot's eyelids fluttered but didn't open. Her pulse remained steady, stronger than her doctors had dared hope. Dorothy Castellano was a fighter. She always had been. The question now was whether she would be strong enough to fight the battles that awaited her awakening. The fluorescent lights of the ICU cast harsh shadows across Dot's motionless face as Carmen adjusted the visitor's chair closer to the bed. 3 days had passed since the surgery, and the doctors remained cautiously optimistic. Dot's vital signs were stabilizing. but she remained unconscious, her breathing assisted by machines that beeped in steady rhythm. Carmen smoothed her hair and checked her reflection in the darkened window. She'd been at the hospital almost constantly, earning praise from the nursing staff for her dedication. "Such a devoted daughter-in-law," the day shift supervisor had commented. "Mrs. Castellano is lucky to have someone who cares so much." Lucky indeed, Carmen thought, her fingers tracing the edge of her phone. She'd made her first transfer yesterday, a modest $15,000 to cover the most urgent gambling debts. Her online poker account had been hemorrhaging money for months, each loss driving her deeper into desperation. The mortgage payment was due in 2 weeks, and their credit cards were maxed out. Michael's real estate commissions had dried up along with the Florida housing market, leaving them scrambling to maintain appearances. "How's she doing today?" Michael's voice startled her from her thoughts. He stood in the doorway, avoiding direct eye contact with the monitors, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. "The same." Carmen kept her voice low, appropriately somber. "The neurologist said it could be days before we know anything definitive about brain function." Michael nodded, his discomfort palpable. He'd visited twice since the surgery, each time finding excuses to leave quickly. Carmen knew why. Guilt ate at him differently than it did her. Where she had learned to compartmentalize, to rationalize, Michael simply couldn't face what they were doing. "The kids are asking about her," he said. "Jake wants to visit after school." "Not yet." Carmen's response was immediate. "She's too fragile. When she's stronger, when she's awake." She let the implication hang between them. If Dot woke up, a nurse entered to check Dot's IV, and Carmen immediately shifted into her performance. "Nurse Jennifer, thank you so much for taking such good care of her. I know she'd be grateful if she could express it." "Of course, honey. You go get some coffee, stretch your legs. I'll sit with her for a while." Carmen smiled gratefully. "I just feel so helpless. She's been like a mother to me, especially after we lost Tony. I keep thinking about all the times she helped us, all the sacrifices she made for the family." The nurse's expression softened with sympathy. "She raised you well, from what I can see. That kind of love doesn't go unnoticed." As soon as they were alone in the hallway, Michael grabbed Carmen's arm. "We need to talk. Not here." They walked to the hospital cafeteria in silence. The afternoon crowd was thin, a few families, some off-duty staff grabbing late lunches. Michael chose a corner table far from other diners. "I can't do this," he whispered, his voice strained. "Last night I dreamed about her counting money, asking where it went. Carmen, she trusted us. She trusted me." Carmen reached across the table, her touch gentle but her voice firm. "Michael, look at me. We've been over this. She's unconscious. The doctors aren't even sure she'll wake up. And if she does—" Carmen paused, choosing her words carefully. "Even if she does, she'll need full-time care. Memory issues are common after this type of trauma. We're managing her assets responsibly." "Responsibly?" Michael's voice cracked. "Carmen, you moved $75,000 yesterday. I saw the confirmation emails." Carmen's jaw tightened. She'd been careful to use her own email for the transfers, but Michael had found her laptop open. "That money went to pay off our mortgage, to secure our children's home. Do you want Jake and Sophia to lose their house? Do you want them to know their parents are failures?" The manipulation was subtle but effective. Michael's shoulders sagged. She worked so hard for that money. 35 years of 12-hour shifts, saving every penny. And now it's protecting her family. That's what she would want." Carmen's voice carried a note of conviction that almost convinced her own conscience. "Michael, we're not stealing from a stranger. We're family. When she recovers, if she recovers, we'll explain everything. We'll pay it back." But Carmen had no intention of paying anything back. The spreadsheet hidden in her laptop showed the true extent of their financial catastrophe. $89,000 in credit card debt, $12,000 owed to her bookie, 3 months behind on the mortgage. Even Dot's entire savings wouldn't be enough to restore their previous lifestyle, but it would buy them time. Time to figure out the next move. The bank called. Michael said quietly. That manager, Thompson. He left a message asking about unusual account activity. Carmen's pulse quickened, but her expression remained calm. I'll handle it. Banks always flag large transfers. It's routine. I have the power of attorney documents. Everything we're doing is legal. Legal, perhaps, but they both knew it was far from ethical. That evening, Carmen returned to the hospital for her nighttime vigil. She'd established a routine that impressed the staff, arriving each morning at 7, staying until noon, returning for the evening shift until 10 p.m. It gave her ample opportunity to monitor Dot's condition while maintaining her image as the devoted family member. She settled into the familiar chair beside Dot's bed, pulling out her tablet. To any observer, she appeared to be reading, perhaps catching up on emails or managing family business. In reality, she was logged into 3 different online gambling sites, her fingers dancing across the screen as she placed bets with increasing desperation. The poker losses had started small, $50 here, $100 there, but Carmen had convinced herself she was skilled enough to win it back. Each loss led to bigger bets, each bigger bet to more devastating losses. She'd liquidated her retirement account 6 months ago. The jewelry Tony had given Dot for her last birthday was already at a pawn shop downtown. Her phone buzzed with a text from her bookie. Payment overdue. Interest accumulating daily. Don't make this difficult. Carmen glanced at Dot's peaceful face, then back at her phone. Another transfer, she decided. Just enough to keep the wolves at bay until she could figure out a more permanent solution. The tablet screen glowed as she navigated to Dot's savings account. $136,000 remaining. She moved another $25,000 to their joint checking account, then immediately transferred $15,000 to cover the gambling debt. The remaining $10,000 would handle the mortgage payment and buy groceries for the week. As she completed the transactions, Dot's eyelids fluttered slightly. Carmen froze, her heart hammering. But Dot's breathing remained steady, her expression unchanged. Just muscle reflexes, Carmen told herself. The nurse had warned her about involuntary movements during recovery. Sweet dreams, Dot, Carmen whispered, leaning forward to adjust the blanket around her mother-in-law's shoulders. Don't worry about anything. I'm taking care of everything. Quote Dot. At 9:47 p.m., Carmen's phone rang. The caller ID showed Lisa's Atlanta number. Carmen, how is she tonight? Carmen's voice immediately took on the appropriate tone of exhausted worry. No change, sweetie. The doctors say we just have to wait. Her body is fighting so hard, but I'm coming down this weekend. I can't stand being this far away. Carmen's stomach tightened. Lisa was sharp, analytical, a successful attorney with an eye for detail. Having her in Florida would complicate everything. Lisa, that's sweet, but there's really nothing you can do here. Maybe wait until she's awake? I know she'd want to see you when she can actually respond. I need to see her, Carmen. And I need to help with her affairs. Insurance, medical decisions, financial management. I've got all that handled, Carmen said quickly. The power of attorney covers everything. Really, Lisa? I know you mean well, but I'm not questioning your authority, Carmen. I just want to help. She's my mother, too. The line went quiet for a moment. Carmen knew she had to be careful here. Lisa's devotion to Dot was absolute, and any hint of resistance might raise suspicions. Of course she is, Carmen said softly. I'm sorry, I'm just exhausted. Come whenever you want. We'll get through this together. After ending the call, Carmen stared at Dot's face in the dim light. She thought about the woman who had welcomed her into the family 15 years ago, who had babysat Jake and Sophia countless times, who had helped with homework and attended every school play and soccer game. The woman who had worked double shifts to help pay for Michael's real estate licensing, who had quietly slipped them money during the lean months without making them feel like failures. For a moment, Carmen's resolve wavered. She imagined Dot waking up to discover her betrayal, the hurt and confusion in those kind eyes. She thought about Jake and Sophia learning what their mother had done, about the family that would be destroyed if the truth came out. But then her phone buzzed with another text from the bookie, and reality crashed back. She was too far down the hole to climb out now. The only way forward was through. Carmen returned to her tablet, checking the balance in Dot's checking account. Still $74,000 available. Enough for one more significant transfer, before she'd need to tap into the CDs. She scheduled another $30,000 to move overnight, rationalizing it as payment for her around-the-clock caregiving services. As midnight approached, Carmen gathered her things to leave. She pressed a kiss to Dot's forehead, a gesture that had become routine for the benefit of the nursing staff. "Sleep well," she whispered. "Tomorrow's another day." But as she walked toward the elevator, Carmen couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Dot's vital signs were improving daily. The doctor had mentioned reducing sedation tomorrow to assess her neurological responses. And Lisa would be arriving soon with her attorney's instincts and her fierce protectiveness of the woman who had raised her. Carmen's phone buzzed once more as she reached her car. A banking alert. Large transaction completed. Account balance, $44,000. She sat in the hospital parking lot, staring at the number on her screen. In 3 days, she transferred nearly $200,000 from Dot's accounts. The money that was supposed to ensure Dot's comfortable retirement, the nest egg built through decades of sacrifice and careful planning. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. Carmen's addiction had consumed everything she touched, and now it was consuming the woman who had loved her like a daughter. She started the engine and drove home through the empty streets of Coral Springs, past the retirement community where Dot had hoped to spend her golden years in peace, past the small house where Jake and Sophia slept peacefully, unaware that their inheritance was disappearing one transfer at a time. In her rearview mirror, the hospital grew smaller, but Carmen knew she'd be back tomorrow, playing the role of the devoted daughter-in-law, maintaining the facade that was becoming harder to sustain with each passing day. And in the ICU, Dorothy Castellano's heart continued its steady rhythm, each beat carrying her closer to the moment when she would wake up and discover that trust, like love, could be the most dangerous gift of all. The first thing Dot noticed when consciousness slowly crept back was the antiseptic smell, that distinctive hospital blend of bleach and industrial soap that had defined her working life for 3.5 decades. Her eyelids felt weighted, her mouth caught and dry, but her mind began cataloging sensations with the methodical precision of a trained nurse assessing a patient's condition. Chest tight but breathing independently. Check. Heart rhythm steady. She could feel it without needing the monitor's confirmation. Check. No immediate pain, suggesting adequate medication management. The surgery had been successful then. She's waking up. Carmen's voice, thick with what sounded like relief and exhaustion. Dot? Can you hear me, sweetheart? Dot's eyes fluttered open, the harsh fluorescent lights making her squint. Carmen's face came into focus, hollow-eyed, makeup smudged, her usual perfect appearance showing cracks of genuine stress. Or what looked like genuine stress. "Water," Dot managed, her voice barely a whisper. Carmen immediately reached for the plastic cup on the bedside table, holding the straw to Dot's lips with practiced care. "Small sips," she cautioned. "You've been unconscious for a week." A week. Dot's nursing mind processed this information with growing clarity. A week of lost time, of complete dependence on others. She tried to piece together her memories, the crushing chest pain, the ambulance, Carmen's tearful face in the emergency room. Everything after that was fragments and shadows. "The children?" Dot asked. "They're fine. Jake wanted to visit, but I thought it was better to wait until you were stronger. Sophia made you a card. It's right here on your table." Quote. Dot's eyes moved to the colorful construction paper card decorated with glitter hearts and her granddaughter's careful handwriting. "Get well soon, Grandma Dot. We love you." The sight brought tears to her eyes, though she couldn't quite explain why they felt different from the tears of relief she expected. "Dr. Rodriguez says the surgery went perfectly," Carmen continued, settling back into what was clearly her established spot beside the bed. "2 stents, but your heart function should return to near normal. You're going to be fine." "Fine," Dot tested the word in her mind. She felt anything but fine, though she couldn't pinpoint why. Her body was healing. She could sense that much. But something nagged at the edges of her consciousness, like a word on the tip of her tongue that wouldn't come. "I need to call Marcus Thompson," Dot said suddenly, remembering her bank manager's voice from what felt like a distant dream. "Did he call while I was?" Carmen's hand tightened almost imperceptibly on the bed rail. "Oh, honey, don't worry about any of that business right now. I've been handling everything. The hospital bills, insurance claims, all your accounts. Everything's taken care of." "But I should check. Dot, please." Carmen's voice carried a note of gentle firmness. "The doctor was very clear that you need to avoid stress. Your heart is still healing. I have the power of attorney, remember? Everything is exactly as it should be." The power of attorney. Yes, Dot remembered signing those papers in Carmen's kitchen, Jake and Sophia doing homework at the same table, while she and Carmen went through the legal documents. Carmen had been so thorough, so considerate of every possibility. "What if something happens to you?" Carmen had asked. "What if you're in an accident, or sick, and can't make decisions? Someone needs to be able to help you." It had made perfect sense then. Carmen was organized, responsible, devoted to the family. She managed the household finances expertly, had helped Dot navigate the maze of Tony's insurance claims after his death. Who better to trust with such important responsibilities? But now, in the stark hospital light, something about Carmen's reassurances felt off. Not wrong, exactly, but performed. Like the careful bedside manner nurses used with difficult patients. "I'd like to see my bank statements," Dot said, watching Carmen's face carefully, "just to understand what's been happening." "Of course, when you're stronger. Right now, you need to focus on recovery." Carmen stood and smoothed her blouse, checking her phone. "I need to step out and call Michael. Let him know you're awake. He's been so worried." Has he? Dot wondered. Michael's relationship with worry had always been complicated. He felt it intensely, but expressed it poorly, often through avoidance rather than presence. During Tony's final illness, Michael had found reasons to be anywhere but the hospital room. After Carmen left, Dot lay in the silence, her mind growing clearer by the hour. 35 years of nursing had taught her to trust her instincts about people, and right now those instincts were whispering warnings she couldn't quite decipher. "Well, look who's decided to rejoin the world." Dot turned toward the familiar voice and smiled for the first time since waking. Eleanor Watkins stood in the doorway, her silver hair perfectly coiffed despite the early hour, her arms loaded with a small overnight bag and what appeared to be several days' worth of mail. "Ellie." Dot's voice was stronger now, touched with genuine warmth. Her neighbor from the retirement community was exactly what she needed, someone with no agenda beyond friendship. "Honey, you scared us all to death." Ellie bustled into the room with characteristic efficiency, setting the mail on the bedside table and pulling up a second chair. "I've been checking your place every day, bringing in the mail, watering your plants. That daughter-in-law of yours said you probably wouldn't want visitors yet, but I figured that was nonsense. When people are sick, they need their friends." "What day is it?" Dot asked, suddenly realizing she'd lost track of time completely. "Thursday, October 12th. You went into surgery last Thursday morning." Ellie sorted through the mail with practiced hands. "Mostly junk, but there are some things here that look important. Bank statements? Insurance correspondence. Want me to open them for you?" "Yes, please." Dot felt a flutter of anxiety she couldn't explain. "Carmen said she's been handling everything, but I'd like to know what's happening with my accounts." Ellie's expression sharpened, the look of a woman who'd spent 40 years as an executive secretary and knew important paperwork when she saw it. She opened the first envelope carefully, her eyebrows rising as she read. "Honey, this is odd. This bank statement shows some very large withdrawals over the past week. $75,000 on Monday, $25,000 on Tuesday, $30,000 yesterday." She looked up at Dot with concern. "Did you authorize these?" Dot's blood chilled. "I've been unconscious since last Thursday." "Well, someone with account access has been very busy." Ellie opened another envelope, her frown deepening. This is from your credit union. Another large withdrawal, $40,000 from your CD account. The room seemed to tilt around Dot. She gripped the bed rails, her healing heart beginning to race. How much is left? Ellie scanned the statements with growing alarm. According to these numbers, Dot, honey, you had over $240,000 in various accounts last week. These statements show current balances totaling less than $50,000. Nearly $200,000. Gone. In 1 week, while she lay unconscious, fighting for her life. There has to be a mistake, Dot whispered, but even as she said it, she knew there wasn't. The pieces were falling into place with horrible clarity. Carmen's evasiveness about the bank manager's call, her insistence that Dot not worry about financial matters, her strange performance of devotion that felt just slightly off-key. Dot, who has access to your accounts? Ellie's voice was gentle but urgent. Carmen, I gave her power of attorney after Tony died. She said it was just for emergencies. Ellie's face went hard. Well, it seems she decided this qualified as an emergency, though I'm not sure whose emergency she was solving. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Dot's phone rang from the bedside table, the hospital landline Carmen had arranged. Ellie answered with crisp efficiency. Mrs. Castellano's room? Yes, this is Eleanor Watkins, her neighbor. Mr. Thompson from the bank? She's awake now, yes. What's that? I see. Yes, I think you'd better speak with her directly. Ellie handed Dot the phone, her expression grim. It's Marcus Thompson. He says it's urgent. Dot took the phone with trembling hands. Marcus? Mrs. Castellano, thank God you're awake. I've been trying to reach you for days. We've had some very unusual activity on your accounts. Large transfers that don't match your normal banking patterns. I flagged them for review, but the power of attorney documentation appears to be in order. How much, Marcus? Dot's voice was steady, drawing on decades of experience delivering difficult news to patients and families. Mrs. Castellano, in the past week, someone has transferred $187,000 from your various accounts. The transactions were all authorized with your power of attorney, but the amounts and frequency, it's exactly the kind of pattern we see in elder financial abuse cases. Elder financial abuse. The phrase hit Dot like a physical blow. She'd read about it in nursing journals, seen the statistics, even suspected it in a few of her patients over the years. But she'd never imagined herself as a victim. Marcus, I need you to freeze all my accounts immediately. No more transfers, no matter what documentation is presented. Already done. I froze everything this morning when the pattern became undeniable. Mrs. Castellano, I hate to ask this, but do you know who might have done this? Through the hospital room doorway, Dot could see Carmen walking down the hall, phone pressed to her ear, gesturing animatedly as she spoke. Her daughter-in-law, the woman she'd trusted like her own child, the woman she'd watched raise her grandchildren, the woman who'd held her hand as they wheeled her into surgery. Yes, Dot said quietly. I know exactly who did this. As she hung up the phone, Ellie reached over and squeezed her hand. What do you want to do, honey? Dot looked at the bank statements spread across her bed, at the evidence of betrayal so complete it took her breath away. She thought of Tony, who'd worked construction for 40 years to build their nest egg. She thought of all the double shifts she'd pulled, the holidays she'd worked, the careful budgeting and planning that had gone into securing her retirement. And she thought of Carmen, who was about to walk back into this room and continue her performance of loving concern, not knowing that the woman she'd robbed was now fully awake and aware. I want to know exactly what happened to every penny, Dot said, surprising herself with the steel in her voice. And then I want justice. Carmen's laughter echoed from the hallway as she finished her phone call. In a moment, she would walk back into the room, expecting to find the same trusting, vulnerable woman she'd left behind. Instead, she would find Dorothy Castellano, retired cardiac nurse, widow, grandmother, and now something she'd never been before, a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The performance was about to end. The real drama was just beginning. The discharge paperwork crinkled in Carmen's hands as she helped Dot into the passenger seat of her Honda Pilot. 2 weeks had passed since the surgery, and the doctors were amazed by Dot's recovery. Her vital signs were stable, her incision healing beautifully, and her mental acuity had returned with remarkable sharpness. Perhaps too sharp, Carmen thought, noticing the way Dot's eyes seemed to catalog every detail of their interaction with clinical precision. "Are you comfortable?" Carmen asked, adjusting the seatbelt across Dot's chest with practiced care. "I know the ride home can be jarring after being in bed for so long." "I'm fine," Dot replied, her voice neutral. She'd been unusually quiet during the discharge process, letting Carmen handle the paperwork and medication instructions without her usual questions and concerns. It was unlike her, this passive acceptance of others managing her affairs. The drive through Coral Springs passed in relative silence. Carmen pointed out familiar landmarks: the grocery store where Dot shopped weekly, the bank where she'd been a customer for 20 years, the small cafe where she met her book club every Tuesday. Everything looked the same, but Dot felt like she was seeing it all through different eyes. "I thought I'd stay with you for a few days," Carmen said as they pulled into the Coral Springs mobile home park. "Just until you get your strength back. Michael can handle the kids, and I want to make sure you're eating properly, taking your medications on schedule." "That's not necessary," Dot said quietly. "I'm perfectly capable of managing my own recovery." Carmen's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "The doctor said you shouldn't be alone for at least a week. What if something happens? What if you fall or have chest pains again?" "Then I'll call 911, just like I did before." Dot's tone was matter-of-fact, betraying none of the turmoil beneath the surface. "Carmen, I appreciate everything you've done, but I need to get back to my normal routine." They pulled into Dot's driveway, and Carmen reluctantly agreed to leave after helping her get settled. As she gathered the hospital bags and medications, she kept glancing at Dot's face, searching for signs of suspicion or awareness. But Dot's expression remained pleasantly neutral, giving nothing away. "I'll be back tomorrow morning to check on you," Carmen said, hovering by the front door. "Promise me you'll call if you need anything." "Of course," Dot replied, already reaching for the deadbolt as soon as Carmen stepped outside. The moment the door clicked shut, Dot's composure cracked. She leaned against the wall, her heart racing, not from the surgery, but from the effort of containing her rage and heartbreak for the past 2 weeks. Ever since Ellie's visit and Marcus's phone call, she'd been planning this moment. Her small living room looked exactly as she'd left it, but somehow felt foreign. The family photos on the mantel, Carmen and Michael's wedding, the grandchildren's school pictures, holidays and birthdays spanning 15 years, now felt like evidence of a life built on lies. Dot walked to her kitchen table, where she'd left her laptop charging before the heart attack. She opened it with steady hands and navigated to her online banking. The login screen appeared and she entered her password, the same one she'd used for years. Access denied. Password incorrect. She tried again, certain she'd entered it correctly. Same result. Her phone rang. She recognized the number immediately. "Mrs. Castellano, this is Marcus Thompson. I wanted to call as soon as I heard you were home. How are you feeling?" "Like I've been robbed," Dot said, without preamble. "Marcus, I can't access my online banking. My password's been changed." "I'm not surprised. Whoever did this would want to maintain control of the accounts. Mrs. Castellano, I think you should come in tomorrow. There are things we need to discuss, and you need to see the full extent of what happened." "Can you tell me now? I need to know." Marcus's voice was gentle but firm. "This is the kind of conversation we should have in person. I've prepared a complete transaction history, and frankly, some of it is going to be very difficult to hear." After hanging up, Dot sat in her kitchen, staring at the laptop screen. She thought about calling Lisa, but her stepdaughter was in the middle of a major case and didn't need this additional stress. She thought about calling the police, but she needed more information first. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Through the peephole, she saw Ellie's familiar silver hair. "Thank goodness you're home," Ellie said as Dot opened the door. "I've been so worried. That daughter-in-law of yours called me 3 times today, asking if I'd seen you, telling me you shouldn't be alone. I told her you were tougher than she gave you credit for. Ellie, I need your help, Dot said, leading her to the kitchen table. I can't access my bank accounts online. The passwords have been changed, and I need to know exactly what happened while I was unconscious. Ellie's expression hardened. I've been thinking about this for 2 weeks, honey. That girl was spending an awful lot of time on her phone while she was supposedly keeping vigil at your bedside, and she was mighty nervous when I brought up those bank statements. I'm going to the bank tomorrow, but I need to prepare myself. Will you help me gather evidence? For the next 2 hours, they worked methodically through Dot's financial records. Ellie's secretarial background proved invaluable as she organized statements, highlighted discrepancies, and created a timeline of the theft. The picture that emerged was devastating in its scope and calculation. Look at this, Ellie said, pointing to a series of transactions. She started small, $15,000 the day after your surgery, then bigger amounts as she got bolder, or more desperate. Dot studied the pattern. She transferred money almost daily. While I was unconscious, fighting for my life, she was systematically stealing everything Tony and I saved. The question is what you're going to do about it. Before Dot could answer, her phone rang. Carmen's name appeared on the screen. I should answer, Dot said. I can't let her know I'm suspicious. Dot, I wanted to check on you before bed. Are you feeling all right? You seemed a little distant today. I'm just tired, Carmen. It's been a long day. I know, sweetie. Listen, I was thinking, maybe we should talk about your finances tomorrow. I know money matters can be stressful after a medical crisis, but I want you to know that everything is secure. I've been very careful with your accounts. The audacity of the statement left Dot momentarily speechless. What do you mean? Well, there were some medical expenses that insurance didn't cover, and I had to move some money around to make sure all your bills were paid. But don't worry, it's all documented. I have receipts for everything. Lies. Dot knew from her insurance coordinator that her surgery was covered at 100%. How much are we talking about, Carmen? Oh, not much. Maybe 30 or 40,000. Nothing that puts your financial security at risk. 30 or 40,000. Carmen was already minimizing the theft, preparing her cover story. Dot felt sick. That seems like a lot, she said carefully. Medical bills add up quickly. But honestly, Dot, you don't need to worry about any of this. I've got everything under control. Maybe we should set up a regular allowance for you. Something simple, so you don't have to think about managing multiple accounts. An allowance. From her own money. Dot gripped the phone tighter. Carmen, I'd like to come by tomorrow. I want to see exactly what happened with my accounts. The pause on the other end was telling. Of course. But wouldn't it be easier if I just brought everything to you? I know you're still recovering, and I have all the paperwork organized. No, Dot said firmly. I want to see it at your house, with Michael present. As a family. Another pause. All right, how about tomorrow afternoon? I'll make sure Michael's home. After hanging up, Dot looked at Ellie. She's going to try to cover this up. She's already started lying about the amounts. What's your plan? I'm going to Marcus first thing in the morning. I want to know exactly how much she stole and have copies of everything. Then I'm going to confront her. Are you sure you're ready for that conversation? It's going to be ugly. Dot thought about Tony, about the life they'd built together through hard work and sacrifice. She thought about the trust she'd placed in Carmen, the love she'd shown her grandchildren, the family bonds she'd believed were unbreakable. I've been a cardiac nurse for 35 years, she said. I've delivered news that destroyed families, held hands with people facing their worst fears, and watched people die despite everything I could do to save them. I think I can handle confronting the woman who robbed me while I was unconscious. Ellie nodded approvingly. What about Michael? Do you think he knew? Michael's weak, but he's not evil. Carmen manipulates him, but he's still my son. I need to know how deep this goes. That night, Dot lay in her own bed for the first time in 2 weeks, staring at the ceiling. She thought about the woman who'd held her hand before surgery, who'd called Lisa with tearful updates, who'd sat by her bedside playing the role of devoted daughter-in-law while systematically stealing her life savings. She thought about the grandchildren she adored, who would be devastated by what was about to unfold. She thought about the family dinners, the holidays, the shared memories that would all be tainted by this betrayal. But mostly, she thought about Tony, what he would say, what he would do. Tony had been a man of simple principles. Work hard, love your family, and never let anyone take advantage of you. He would want her to fight. At 6 a.m., Dot called Coral Springs Community Bank and made an appointment with Marcus Thompson for 9 a.m. Then she called Lisa in Atlanta. Dot, is everything okay? You sound different. Lisa, I need you to know something. I'm going to be dealing with a family crisis over the next few days, and I might need your help. What kind of crisis? Dot took a deep breath. Carmen has been stealing from me. While I was unconscious after surgery, she used my power of attorney to steal nearly $200,000 from my accounts. The silence on the other end stretched for long seconds. When Lisa finally spoke, her voice was cold with fury. That bitch, I'm coming down there. Lisa, Don't argue with me, I'm getting on a plane today. And Dot, don't confront her until I get there. If she's stolen that much money, there's no telling what else she might do. After hanging up, Dot felt a surge of strength. She wasn't alone in this fight. She had allies. Ellie, Marcus, and now Lisa. She had evidence, and she had the truth. But most importantly, she had survived. She'd survived the heart attack, the surgery, and the betrayal. She'd awakened to find her trust shattered and her savings stolen. But she'd awakened fighting. Carmen thought she was dealing with a vulnerable elderly woman, too trusting and too weak to fight back. She was about to learn that Dorothy Castellano hadn't spent 35 years in cardiac care without developing a backbone of steel. The reckoning was coming, and Dot intended to be ready for it. The manila folder in Dot's lap felt heavier than it should, as she sat in her car outside Carmen and Michael's house. Marcus Thompson's meticulous documentation painted a devastating picture. $187,000 transferred in systematic chunks, each transaction authorized with her forged signature. The bank's security cameras had captured Carmen at the ATM on 3 separate occasions, withdrawing maximum daily limits with Dot's debit card. Ellie squeezed her shoulder from the passenger seat. You sure you want me in there? I need a witness, Dot said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Someone who can't be manipulated or gaslit. The house looked the same as always. Well-maintained suburban perfection, with Carmen's carefully curated flower beds and Michael's obsessively clean BMW in the driveway. But now Dot saw it differently. The new outdoor furniture on the patio, the updated landscaping, the fresh coat of paint, all purchased with her stolen money. Carmen opened the door before they could knock, her smile bright but strained. Dot, you look so much better. And Ellie, what a nice surprise. We need to talk, Dot said, stepping past Carmen into the familiar living room where she'd shared countless family dinners and holiday celebrations. Michael emerged from the kitchen, coffee mug in hand, avoiding eye contact. His face was pale, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. Should I make coffee? Carmen asked, her voice artificially cheerful. Or tea? I know you prefer. Sit down, Carmen. Dot's tone cut through the pleasantries like a scalpel. Both of you. Carmen's smile faltered, but she settled onto the couch across from Dot's chair. Michael remained standing near the kitchen doorway, as if preparing to flee. Dot opened the manila folder and placed the first bank statement on the coffee table. This is from my savings account. On October 6th, the day after my surgery, someone transferred $75,000 to an account I don't recognize. Carmen leaned forward, her expression carefully concerned. Dot, honey, I told you there were medical expenses. This is the insurance statement, Dot interrupted, placing another document on the table. My surgery was covered at 100%. There were no out-of-pocket medical expenses. The room went silent except for the tick of the grandfather clock Tony had given them for their 10th anniversary. Carmen's eyes darted to Michael, who was now staring at the floor. I don't understand, Carmen said, but her voice had lost its confident edge. There must be some mistake. October 7th, Dot continued, her voice growing stronger. Another $25,000. October 9th, $30,000. October 11th, $40,000 from my CD account. She placed each statement deliberately, creating a paper trail of betrayal across the coffee table. Carmen's hands began to shake. I can explain. October 13th, $17,000. October 15th, $22,000. Dot's voice was relentless now, each amount a nail in Carmen's coffin of lies. All while I was unconscious. All while you sat by my bedside, holding my hand, telling everyone what a devoted daughter-in-law you were. You don't understand the pressure we've been under. Carmen started, but Dot held up her hand. I understand perfectly. Dot pulled out the final document, a bank receipt showing Carmen's face clearly visible at an ATM. This is you, Carmen. At 11:47 p.m. on October 12th, withdrawing $800 from my checking account. The same night you called Lisa, crying about how worried you were about my condition. Carmen's mask finally slipped. The carefully maintained expression of innocent confusion cracked, revealing something desperate and cornered underneath. You were dying, she whispered. The doctor said you might not wake up. The money was just sitting there. So you decided to steal it. We were drowning. Carmen's voice rose, all pretense abandoned. The house, the credit cards, Michael's business failing. We lost everything. I had debts that would have destroyed us. Gambling debts, Dot said quietly. It wasn't a question. Carmen's face went white. How did you? Marcus Thompson has been a banker for 20 years. He knows the patterns. Small transfers at first, then larger amounts. The timing, the desperation. It's textbook gambling addiction. Michael finally spoke, his voice barely audible. Mom, we were going to pay it back. With what? Dot turned to her son, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. Your real estate license is about to be suspended. Carmen hasn't worked in 3 years. You've been living beyond your means, and when reality caught up, you decided to steal from the woman who raised you. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, Michael said, tears starting to flow. Carmen said you were going to die anyway, that the money would just go to probate, get tied up in legal fees. So you decided to take it first. Dot's voice was ice. While I was fighting for my life, you were dividing up my assets like I was already dead. Carmen stood abruptly, pacing to the window. You don't know what it's like, she said, her voice hard now, defensive. You had your perfect life with Tony, your stable job, your neat little retirement fund. You never had to worry about losing everything, about your children seeing you as a failure. I worked 60-hour weeks for 35 years, Dot said, rising to face her. I saved every penny, denied myself luxuries, worked double shifts when Tony was laid off. That money represents 40 years of sacrifice. And what about our sacrifice? Carmen whirled around, her face flushed with anger. 15 years of taking care of you, visiting every week, including you in every holiday, letting you babysit our children. Letting me? Dot's voice was dangerously quiet. You think we didn't know you were buying Jake and Sophia's affection? The expensive birthday gifts? The college funds? The special treats? You were bribing them to love you more than their own parents. The accusation hit Dot like a physical blow. She thought of every soccer game attended, every scraped knee comforted, every bedtime story read. I loved those children. You loved controlling them, just like you're trying to control this situation now. Carmen's voice turned vicious. You want to destroy our family over money that you'll never even live long enough to spend. Ellie stood up, her face hard with anger. That's enough. Who asked you? Carmen snapped. This is family business. Family doesn't steal from family while they're unconscious in the hospital, Ellie shot back. Michael moved toward his mother, his face crumpled with shame. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It got out of hand so fast. Don't touch me. Dot stepped back, her voice breaking for the first time. Don't you dare touch me. The pain in her voice stopped everyone cold. Carmen's anger deflated, replaced by something that might have been fear. Michael's hands dropped to his sides. I trusted you, Dot whispered, looking between them. Both of you. I gave you everything. My love, my support, my financial security. I made you my family, and you repaid me by stealing my life savings while I was dying. You're not dying, Carmen said weakly. You're fine now. No, Carmen, I'm not fine. I may never be fine again. Dot gathered the bank statements, her hands steady now with resolve. I want every penny returned within 48 hours. All of it. We don't have it, Michael said miserably. Most of it's already gone. Then you'll find a way to get it back. Sell the house, liquidate your retirement accounts, I don't care. But you will return my money. And if we can't? Carmen asked, her voice barely audible. Dot looked at her daughter-in-law, the woman she'd welcomed into her family, the mother of her beloved grandchildren, the person she'd trusted with everything that mattered. Then I'll see you in court, she said. And then I'll see you in prison. The silence that followed was broken only by Michael's quiet sobbing. Carmen stood frozen by the window, staring at the life she'd built with stolen money, watching it crumble around her. Dot walked toward the door, Ellie close behind. She paused at the threshold, looking back at the ruins of her family. I loved you both, she said quietly. I would have given you anything if you'd just asked. Instead, you chose to take everything while I couldn't stop you. The door closed behind them with a soft click, but the sound echoed like thunder through the house, marking the end of trust, the end of family, and the beginning of justice. The confrontation's aftermath settled over Dot like a shroud, as she and Ellie drove away from the house that had once felt like a second home. Her hands remained steady on the steering wheel, but inside, she felt hollowed out. Not from weakness, but from the deliberate excision of people she'd loved who had proven themselves unworthy of that love. You did the right thing, Ellie said quietly, watching Dot's profile. That took tremendous courage. Did it? Dot's voice was flat. Or did I just destroy my grandchildren's lives for the sake of money? You didn't destroy anything, honey. Carmen and Michael did that the moment they decided to steal from you. At home, Dot sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by bank statements and legal documents, trying to process the magnitude of what came next. 48 hours wasn't nearly enough time for Carmen and Michael to return $187,000, not when most of it had already been gambled away or spent on maintaining their lifestyle. Her phone rang. Lisa's name appeared on the screen. I'm at Tampa Airport, Lisa said without preamble. I'll be there in an hour. Have you confronted them yet? Yes, this afternoon. And? Carmen admitted everything, tried to justify it by saying I was dying anyway. Dot's voice caught slightly. She accused me of buying the children's love, said I was controlling and manipulative. The silence on the other end was sharp with fury. That manipulative bitch. Dot, listen to me. Don't let her psychological games get to you. This is classic deflection. She's trying to make you the villain so she can be the victim. I gave them 48 hours to return the money. They won't. They can't. Which means we're going to criminal court. Lisa's attorney voice kicked in, all business and strategy. I've already made calls. I have contacts in the Broward County District Attorney's office. Elder financial abuse is a felony in Florida, and with amounts this large, we're looking at serious prison time. An hour later, Lisa burst through Dot's front door like an avenging angel in a business suit. She gathered her stepmother in a fierce hug, and for a moment, Dot let herself lean into the strength of someone who loved her unconditionally. Let me see everything, Lisa said, immediately shifting into lawyer mode. She spread the documents across the dining room table, her trained eye cataloging evidence with ruthless efficiency. This is actually good. Very good. The paper trail is clear, the amounts are substantial, and the timing during your medical crisis makes it particularly egregious. Lisa, before we go any further, I need to know something. Dot sat across from her stepdaughter. If we pursue this criminally, what happens to Jake and Sophia? Lisa's expression softened. They'll be hurt, confused, probably angry. But Dot, they're going to find out eventually anyway. Kids aren't stupid. They've probably already noticed the expensive purchases, the new car, the sudden upgrade in lifestyle. At least this way, they'll learn that actions have consequences and that someone fought for justice. The next morning brought Detective Rosa Gutierrez to Dot's door. She was younger than Dot had expected, with intelligent dark eyes and an air of quiet competence that immediately put her at ease. "Mrs. Castellano, I've reviewed the preliminary report from the bank. I have to tell you, this is one of the most clear-cut cases of elder financial abuse I've seen." Detective Gutierrez settled into the living room chair, pulling out a digital recorder. The systematic nature of the transfers, the timing during your medical emergency, the use of forged signatures. It shows premeditation and calculated exploitation. "What happens next?" Dot asked. "I'll need your formal statement, then I'll interview the bank manager and gather all the financial records. After that, I'll bring Carmen and Michael in for questioning." Gutierrez's expression hardened. "I have to warn you, Mrs. Castellano. Family members often try to talk victims out of pursuing charges. They'll promise to pay the money back, they'll cry and apologize, they'll try to make you feel guilty for destroying the family. Don't let them." "My grandmother was scammed out of her life savings by someone she trusted," Gutierrez continued, her voice personal now. "She was too embarrassed to tell anyone until it was too late. I became a cop because of what happened to her. People who prey on the elderly, especially family members who exploit trust, they make me sick." That afternoon, Marcus Thompson arrived with a banker's box full of documents. "Every transaction, every forged signature, every security camera image," he said, setting the box on Dot's table. "Mrs. Castellano, in 20 years of banking, I've never seen such systematic theft. Your daughter-in-law was methodical, almost professional in how she drained your accounts." "How long had she been planning this?" Dot asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. "Based on the pattern, I'd say she'd been researching your accounts for months. She knew your balances, your account numbers, even which accounts had the lowest activity levels. This wasn't opportunistic, it was calculated." As they worked through the evidence, Dot's phone buzzed constantly with calls from Carmen and Michael. She let them go to voicemail, but each message grew more desperate. "Mom, please call me back. We need to talk about this as a family." "Dot, I know you're angry, but think about the children. Do you really want to put them through this? We're trying to get the money together. Please don't do anything hasty." Ellie arrived in the evening with a casserole and a grim expression. "I stopped by the grocery store. Margie Henderson cornered me by the produce section. Apparently, word is getting around the community about what happened." "What kind of word?" Lisa asked, looking up from the legal briefs she was reviewing. "Mixed reactions. Some people are outraged on Dot's behalf. Others are saying she should handle it privately, keep it in the family." Ellie's voice carried disgust. "As if theft becomes acceptable when it's done by relatives." "Let them talk," Dot said firmly. "I'm not ashamed of being victimized. I'm ashamed of the people who victimized me." That evening, Jake appeared at Dot's door. At 16, he looked older than his years, his face drawn with the kind of premature seriousness that came from discovering your parents weren't the people you thought they were. "Grandma Dot, can I come in?" Dot's heart clenched as she looked at her grandson, tall like his father, but with Carmen's dark eyes and her own stubborn chin. "Of course, sweetheart." He sat heavily on her couch, his hands clasped between his knees. "My parents are freaking out. Mom's been crying for 2 days. And Dad locked himself in his office. They won't tell me what's happening, but I heard them fighting about money and lawyers and—" He looked up at her with eyes too old for his face. "Did they steal from you?" Lisa started to speak, but Dot held up her hand. This conversation belonged to her and Jake. "Yes," she said simply. "While I was in the hospital after my heart surgery, your mother used my power of attorney to take almost all of my savings. Nearly $200,000. Jake's face went white. But that's—" He struggled for words. "That's everything you and Grandpa Tony saved, isn't it?" "Yes." "While you were sick. Well, you could have died." His voice cracked with adolescent outrage and betrayal. "How could she do that? How could Dad let her?" "I don't know, Jake. I wish I could explain it in a way that made sense, but I can't." "Are you going to have them arrested?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Dot looked at this boy she'd helped raise, whose scraped knees she'd bandaged, whose homework she'd supervised, whose dreams she'd nurtured. The boy who was now forced to grapple with the reality that his parents were criminals. "Yes," she said quietly. "I am." Jake nodded slowly, tears spilling down his cheeks. Good. What they did was wrong. It was really, really wrong. He wiped his face with his sleeve. Grandma Dot, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry they did this to you. Oh, sweetheart. Dot pulled him into a hug, this young man who was choosing integrity over loyalty, justice over comfort. This is not your fault, not yours or Sophia's. You have nothing to apologize for. What's going to happen to us? To me and Sophia? Lisa moved to sit on Jake's other side. You'll be okay. Both of you. Your parents will face consequences for what they did, but you and your sister will get through this. Can I still see you? Jake asked Dot. Even after everything that happens? As long as you want to, Dot said, her voice thick with emotion. You're my grandson. That will never change, no matter what your parents did. After Jake left, Dot sat in her living room with Lisa and Ellie, feeling both heartbroken and strangely relieved. The boy she'd helped raise had shown more moral courage than his parents ever had. You know what the hardest part is? Dot said finally. It's not the money. It's the trust. They didn't just steal my savings. They stole my faith in family, in the people I loved most. Maybe, Lisa said carefully. They gave you something else in return. They showed you who your real family is. She gestured to include herself and Ellie. The people who stand by you when things get difficult, who support you instead of exploiting you. Detective Gutierrez called that evening with an update. I've secured warrants for Carmen and Michael Castellano's arrest. We'll execute them tomorrow morning. Mrs. Castellano, I want you to be prepared. This is going to get intense. Once they're arrested, there's no going back. I understand, Dot said. Detective, how long could they face in prison? For elder financial abuse in this amount? Carmen could get up to 15 years. Michael, as an accomplice, probably 8 to 10. But Mrs. Castellano, that's if they're convicted. They'll likely plead down to lesser charges. As long as they face some consequences, Dot said. I need to know that what they did matters, that elderly people aren't just easy targets for their own families. After hanging up, Dot stood at her kitchen window, looking out at the retirement community where she'd hoped to spend her golden years in peace. Tomorrow, her son and daughter-in-law would be arrested. Tomorrow, the family she'd thought she had would officially cease to exist. But tonight, she was surrounded by people who truly loved her. Lisa, who'd dropped everything to support her. Ellie, who'd become the sister she'd never had. Jake, who'd chosen justice over comfort. Perhaps Lisa was right. Perhaps in losing the family that had betrayed her, she discovered the family that truly mattered. The battle for justice was just beginning, but for the first time since waking up in the hospital, Dorothy Castellano felt like she might actually win. The arrest came at dawn, just as Detective Gutierrez had promised. Dot watched from her living room window as police cars pulled into Carmen and Michael's driveway 3 blocks away, their red and blue lights painting the quiet suburban morning in stark, official colors. She'd chosen not to be present for the actual arrests. She had no desire to see Carmen and Michael led away in handcuffs no matter what they'd done to her. Her phone rang within minutes. Jake's voice was steady but strained. Grandma Dot, they just arrested Mom and Dad. Sophia's hysterical. Can you come over? Please? 20 minutes later, Dot stood in the chaos of what had once been her second home. Police officers moved efficiently through the house, executing search warrants for financial documents and electronic devices. Sophia sat curled on the couch, tears streaming down her 14-year-old face, while Jake hovered protectively nearby. I don't understand, Sophia sobbed when she saw Dot. They said Mom and Dad stole money from you, but that can't be true. They love you. We're family. Dot sat beside her granddaughter, her heart breaking for this innocent child caught in the wreckage of her parents' choices. Sweetheart, sometimes people we love make very bad decisions. That doesn't change how much I love you and Jake. But why would they steal from you? We have money. We have this house, and Mom's car, and… Jake exchanged a look with Dot over his sister's head. Soph, That's where the money came from. The new furniture, Mom's shopping trips, the vacation to Disney last month, it came from Grandma Dot's savings. The reality hit Sophia like a physical blow. Her face crumpled as she understood that her recent memories, the fun family trips, the expensive birthday gifts, the sense of security she'd enjoyed, had all been built on theft from someone she loved. Detective Gutierrez approached them with professional sympathy. "Mrs. Castellano, we'll need to interview the children at some point, but not today. They've been through enough shock." "What happens to them now?" Dot asked. "Child Services is sending someone over. They'll need temporary guardianship arrangements until the parents are released on bail or other family can take custody." Jake straightened his shoulders. "I'm 16. Can't I stay here with Sophia? I can take care of us." "I'm afraid that's not how it works," Detective Gutierrez said gently. "But Mrs. Castellano, as the grandmother, you could petition for temporary custody if you're willing." The irony wasn't lost on Dot. Carmen and Michael had stolen her life savings, and now she was being asked to care for their children. But looking at Jake's determined face and Sophia's tear-streaked cheeks, there was never really a choice. "Of course," she said. "Whatever they need." By afternoon, the story had exploded across local media. The Coral Springs Gazette ran the headline, "Daughter-in-law charged with elder abuse during heart surgery." The local TV stations picked it up for their evening broadcasts, and social media began buzzing with outrage and commentary. Elderly woman robbed by family while fighting for life. $187,000 stolen during emergency surgery. Local couple arrested in elder financial abuse case. Dot's phone rang constantly. Reporters requesting interviews, neighbors expressing shock and support, distant relatives emerging from years of silence to offer sympathy and advice she didn't want. "Don't answer it," Lisa advised, watching Dot stare at the ringing phone. "Let it go to voicemail. The district attorney's office will handle any media statements." But the attention was overwhelming. By evening, news vans had appeared in the Coral Springs mobile home park, and reporters knocked on doors throughout the retirement community, seeking neighbors willing to discuss the case. Ellie arrived with groceries and gossip. "The whole community is talking. Helen Rodriguez from the book club says Carmen always seemed too slick, too perfect. Margaret Walsh remembers seeing Carmen at the casino last year. People are starting to come forward with their own stories." "What kind of stories?" Lisa asked, looking up from the legal briefs she was reviewing. "Suspicious things Carmen said or did. Money she borrowed and never repaid. Stories about Michael's business troubles." Ellie's expression darkened. "And Detective Gutierrez called me. She wants to talk. Apparently, you're not their only victim." The revelation came the next morning, when Detective Gutierrez arrived with a thick file. "Mrs. Castellano, we've discovered additional fraud. Your son Michael has been embezzling from his real estate clients, earnest money deposits, closing funds, escrow accounts. We estimate another $75,000 stolen from at least 6 different clients over the past year." Dot felt sick. How many people did they hurt? "We're still investigating, but it looks like Carmen had gambling debts with multiple bookies, and Michael was using client funds to cover both her debts and their lifestyle." Detective Gutierrez opened her file. "The state attorney's office is now looking at this as an organized conspiracy. The charges are going to be much more serious than we initially thought." That afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. Carmen's mother, Gloria, arrived at Dot's door looking haggard and ashamed. They'd met only a handful of times over the years. Carmen had always claimed her mother was difficult and kept their contact minimal. "Mrs. Castellano, I don't know what to say." Gloria's voice was thick with a lifetime of cigarettes and regret. "I heard about the arrests on the news. I'm so sorry." "Come in," Dot said, curiosity overcoming her anger. Gloria sat heavily at Dot's kitchen table, her hands shaking slightly. "Carmen's been lying to me for years. Told me you were wealthy, that you didn't need all that money anyway. Said Michael's business was booming, and they were doing you a favor by managing your finances." "She told you about the theft?" "Not directly, But she asked me for money last month, said it was just temporary, that her accounts were tied up. When I couldn't help, I'm on Social Security, barely scraping by, she got angry. Started talking about how unfair it was that some people hoarded money while family members struggled. Gloria's voice broke. I should have known. Carmen's been gambling since she was a teenager. I tried everything. Therapy, intervention, cutting her off financially. Nothing worked. When she married Michael, I thought maybe having a family would change her. Did Michael know about her gambling? He had to know. Carmen can't keep secrets when she's desperate. But Michael, he's weak. Always has been. Carmen learned how to manipulate him early on. Gloria wiped her eyes. Mrs. Castellano, I know this doesn't help, but I want you to know that not everyone in Carmen's family is like her. What she did to you while you were sick, it's unforgivable. That evening, as Dot prepared dinner for Jake and Sophia, who were staying with her while the custody arrangements were finalized, another bombshell arrived via email. Carmen's defense attorney had sent a plea proposal. Lisa read it aloud with barely contained fury. They're offering to plead guilty to misdemeanor theft in exchange for probation and restitution payments over 5 years. No jail time. Absolutely not, Dot said immediately. The district attorney won't accept it anyway. With the additional victims and the amounts involved, they're looking at this as a career-making case. Elder abuse has become a priority for law enforcement. Jake looked up from helping Sophia with homework. What would happen if they went to trial? They could face 15 to 20 years each if convicted on all charges, Lisa explained. The prosecution has security camera footage, forged signatures, a clear paper trail, and multiple victims. It's a very strong case. Good, Jake said, with surprising vehemence. They deserve whatever they get. Sophia was quieter, still struggling to reconcile the parents she loved with the criminals they'd become. Grandma Dot, do you think they're sorry? Really sorry? Dot considered the question carefully. I think your father is sorry. Sorry he got caught, sorry he hurt people, sorry his life fell apart. Your mother, I think she's sorry the consequences aren't what she expected. That's not the same thing, is it? No, sweetheart. It's not. The local newspaper ran a follow-up story featuring interviews with the additional fraud victims. A retired teacher who'd lost her home's down payment when Michael embezzled from her real estate transaction. A young couple whose wedding fund disappeared from escrow. An elderly widower whose reverse mortgage proceeds vanished from Michael's supposedly secure account. Each story painted a picture of systematic betrayal, of trust exploited for personal gain. The comments section filled with outrage and support for the victims, but also with disturbing defenses of Carmen and Michael. Family business should stay in the family. She's destroying her own grandchildren's lives over money. Elderly people with too much money are just targets anyway. Dot found herself becoming inadvertently famous as a symbol of elder abuse awareness. The Florida Department of Elder Affairs contacted her about speaking at conferences. A national advocacy group asked her to participate in a documentary about financial exploitation. I never wanted to be a poster child for victimization, she told Lisa one evening as they reviewed the continuing media requests. You're not a poster child for victimization, Lisa replied. You're a symbol of someone who fought back, someone who refused to let family loyalty enable criminal behavior. That's actually pretty powerful. 2 weeks after the arrests, Sophia finally broke down completely. She'd been trying to be strong, to process the reality of her parents' crimes with teenage resilience. But the weight of it all finally crushed her. I hate them, she sobbed in Dot's arms. I hate them for what they did to you, and I hate them for making me hate them. Everything's ruined. Our whole family is ruined. No, Dot said firmly, stroking her granddaughter's hair. Our family isn't ruined. It's changed. And some people showed their true characters. But the love between the people who matter, that's still here. You and Jake and I, we're still family. Lisa and Ellie, we're still family. The people who love you for who you are, not for what they can get from you. We're still here. But what about Mom and Dad? Do we just stop loving them? It was the question Dot had been asking herself since the confrontation. I don't think love just stops, she said carefully. But love doesn't mean accepting bad behavior or enabling people to hurt others. Your parents made choices that hurt a lot of people. They'll face consequences for those choices. That doesn't mean we stop caring about them, but it does mean we don't pretend what they did was okay. As the legal proceedings moved forward and the media attention gradually shifted to other stories, Dot found herself settling into an unexpected new normal. Jake and Sophia had brought life back to her quiet house. She was helping with homework again, attending school events, rediscovering the joy of being needed not for her money, but for her love and guidance. The financial damage was slowly being addressed through insurance claims and asset recovery, though she'd never get back everything Carmen and Michael had stolen. But more importantly, she'd discovered reserves of strength she didn't know she possessed, and relationships that proved more valuable than any bank account. The trial was still months away, but the ripple effects of Carmen and Michael's crimes continued spreading through the community, touching lives, changing perspectives, and forcing everyone to confront uncomfortable truths about trust, family, and the vulnerability that comes with aging. For Dot, the hardest truth was also the most liberating. Sometimes the family that betrays you is the family you need to leave behind. And sometimes, in losing people you thought you couldn't live without, you discover the people you actually can't live without have been there all along. 6 months after the theft, Broward County Courthouse buzzed with activity as State of Florida versus Carmen Castellano and Michael Castellano began. Dot sat in the front row of the gallery, flanked by Lisa and Ellie, watching her son and daughter-in-law enter the courtroom in handcuffs and orange jumpsuits. She'd prepared herself for this moment, but seeing Michael, her baby, the boy she'd rocked to sleep and taught to ride a bicycle, dressed as a criminal, still felt like a physical blow. Carmen looked thinner, her usually perfect hair now limp and gray at the roots. Prison had stripped away her polished facade, revealing someone smaller and more desperate than the confident woman who'd orchestrated the theft. Michael avoided eye contact with everyone, his shoulders hunched in shame and defeat. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Hoffman. Judge Hoffman was a stern woman in her 60s with silver hair and intelligent eyes that missed nothing. She'd built her reputation on tough sentences for white-collar crime, particularly cases involving elder abuse. Assistant District Attorney Sarah Chen rose for opening statements, her voice clear and authoritative. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is a case about the ultimate betrayal of trust. Dorothy Castellano, a 67-year-old retired nurse, lay unconscious in a hospital bed fighting for her life after emergency heart surgery. While machines kept her alive, the defendants, her own son and daughter-in-law, systematically stole her life savings. Chen moved to stand near the jury box, making eye contact with each juror. Over the course of 10 days, while Mrs. Castellano couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't protect herself, Carmen Castellano used forged documents and stolen passwords to transfer $187,000 from multiple accounts. She did this not once in a moment of desperation, but 17 separate times, each transaction a deliberate choice to steal from a woman she claimed to love. The prosecutor clicked through financial records on a large screen. The evidence will show that Carmen Castellano had been planning this theft for months, studying Mrs. Castellano's banking patterns, memorizing account numbers, and positioning herself to strike when her victim was most vulnerable. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. It was premeditated exploitation of an elderly woman's trust. Chen turned to face the defendants. The evidence will also show that Michael Castellano wasn't just an accomplice to his mother's victimization. He was actively embezzling from his own real estate clients, stealing earnest money deposits and closing funds to fuel his wife's gambling addiction and their lavish lifestyle. Carmen's defense attorney, David Morrison, was a polished man in an expensive suit who specialized in making criminals seem sympathetic. His opening painted Carmen as a desperate mother driven to desperation by circumstances beyond her control. Ladies and gentlemen, Carmen Castellano is not the calculating predator the prosecution wants you to believe. She's a mother of 2 teenagers, a woman who spent 15 years caring for her mother-in-law with genuine love and devotion. Yes, she made a terrible mistake, one she deeply regrets, but it was born from desperation, not greed. Morrison's voice carried practiced emotion. Carmen had been struggling with gambling addiction. a recognized mental illness that clouded her judgment. When faced with losing her children's home, destroying their future, she made a decision that haunts her every day. She believed Mrs. Castellano was dying, that the money would be tied up in probate for years while her children suffered. Michael's attorney, Robert Valdez, took a different approach. Michael Castellano is a weak man who fell under the influence of his manipulative wife. The prosecution wants to make him an equal partner in this conspiracy, but the evidence will show he was a victim too, bullied and coerced into providing account information he never thought would be used for theft. Dot listened to the defense arguments with growing anger. They were turning Carmen into a victim of mental illness and Michael into a victim of spousal abuse, erasing the calculated nature of their crimes and the devastating impact on actual victims. The prosecution's case unfolded with methodical precision. Marcus Thompson took the stand first, walking the jury through the banking records that showed Carmen's systematic theft. "In 20 years of banking, I've never seen such calculated financial abuse," Marcus testified. The defendant studied Mrs. Castellano's account patterns for months. She knew which accounts had automatic transfers, which ones Mrs. Castellano checked regularly, and which CDs were approaching maturity. This level of familiarity required extensive planning. Detective Gutierrez followed, presenting security camera footage that showed Carmen making ATM withdrawals with Dot's stolen debit card, while Dot lay unconscious in the ICU. The timestamps on these transactions correspond exactly with the defendant's hospital sign-in logs, Gutierrez explained. She would leave Mrs. Castellano's bedside, drive to various ATMs throughout Coral Springs, withdraw maximum daily limits, then return to the hospital to continue her performance as the devoted daughter-in-law. The prosecution presented testimony from Michael's real estate clients, ordinary people whose dreams had been shattered by his embezzlement. Sarah Martinez, a young teacher, broke down as she described losing her home's down payment. "I trusted him with everything," she sobbed. "He seemed so professional, so caring. When the closing was delayed, he said it was just paperwork issues. I never imagined he was stealing our money to support his wife's gambling habit." Then came the moment Dot had been dreading, her own testimony. Lisa had prepared her extensively, but walking to the witness stand felt like the longest journey of her life. She looked out at the courtroom packed with reporters, community members, and curious observers, all watching her confront the family that had betrayed her. Ada Chen's questioning was gentle but thorough. "Mrs. Castellano, can you tell the jury about your relationship with the defendants before your heart attack?" "I loved them," Dot said simply, her voice carrying clearly through the courtroom. "Carmen was like a daughter to me. When she married Michael, I welcomed her with open arms. I trusted her with my grandchildren, with my finances, with my life." "Did you ever give Carmen permission to transfer money from your accounts?" "Never. The power of attorney was for emergencies, medical decisions if I couldn't make them myself. I never imagined it would be used to steal my life savings while I was unconscious." Chen displayed the timeline of thefts alongside Dot's medical records. "Mrs. Castellano, while these transfers were happening, what was your medical condition?" "I was in a medically induced coma. I'd flatlined during surgery and been revived. The doctors weren't sure I would survive." Dot's voice strengthened with each word. "Carmen knew this. She sat by my bedside, holding my hand, while planning how to steal from me." Morrison's cross-examination attempted to paint Dot as vindictive and financially comfortable enough to absorb the losses. "Mrs. Castellano, isn't it true that you have significant insurance coverage that will reimburse much of this money?" "Some of it," Dot replied. "But that doesn't make the theft any less wrong." "And isn't it true that you've always been generous with your family financially? You paid for Michael's real estate licensing, helped with the children's expenses, even co-signed their mortgage?" "Yes, because I loved them." "There's a difference between giving freely and having someone steal from you when you're helpless." Morrison pressed harder. "Isn't it true that you're pursuing this case not for justice, but out of anger that Carmen and Michael dared to act without your permission?" Dot's eyes flashed. "Mr. Morrison, they stole my life savings while I was unconscious in a hospital bed. That's not acting without permission. That's theft, criminal theft. And I'm pursuing this case because elderly people deserve protection from the very family members who claim to love them." The courtroom fell silent at the steel in her voice. Carmen took the stand in her own defense, and Morrison guided her through a carefully rehearsed narrative of desperation and mental illness. "I loved Dot like my own mother," Carmen testified, tears streaming down her face. "When the doctors said she might not survive, I panicked. We were going to lose our house, our children's home. I thought the money would just sit in probate for years while my kids became homeless." But Ada Chen's cross-examination shredded Carmen's story. "Miss Castellano, you testified that you thought Mrs. Castellano was dying. But her medical records show she was stabilizing by the second day. Why did you continue stealing for 8 more days?" Carmen faltered. The doctors said there could be complications." "Ms. Castellano, you transferred $30,000 on October 15th, the same day you called Mrs. Castellano's stepdaughter to report that her recovery was going wonderfully. How do you reconcile those two things?" "I was confused. Emotional." Chen pressed on relentlessly. "You made 17 separate transfers over 10 days. That's not confusion. That's systematic theft. And the gambling records we've subpoenaed show you were playing online poker within hours of each transfer. You weren't paying bills. You were feeding your addiction with stolen money." Michael's testimony was even more devastating. His attorney had painted him as Carmen's victim, but under questioning, his weakness and complicity became clear. "I knew it was wrong," he admitted, breaking down completely. "But Carmen said Mom was going to die anyway, that we'd pay it back when we got the inheritance. I was scared of losing everything." "So you chose to steal from your dying mother instead?" Chen asked. "It wasn't supposed to be stealing. Carmen said it was just borrowing against our inheritance." "Mr. Castellano, did you ever ask your mother if you could borrow this money?" "No." "Because you knew she would say no?" Michael's voice was barely a whisper. "Yes." Jake's testimony was perhaps the most powerful. At 17 now, he took the stand with quiet dignity. "My parents taught me that stealing was wrong," he said. "They taught me to respect my elders, to be honest, to take responsibility for my actions. Then they did the exact opposite of everything they'd taught me. My grandmother was dying, and instead of praying for her recovery, my parents were calculating how much they could steal from her." Morrison tried to attack Jake's loyalty to his grandmother over his parents, but the teenager's moral clarity was unshakable. "I love my parents," Jake said firmly, "but love doesn't mean accepting criminal behavior. What they did was wrong, and they need to face consequences for it." The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they returned, the foreman stood with the gravity appropriate to the moment. "On the charge of elder financial abuse in the first degree, we find the defendant Carmen Castellano guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud, we find the defendant Carmen Castellano guilty. On the charge of forgery, we find the defendant Carmen Castellano guilty." The guilty verdicts continued through all charges for both defendants. Carmen stared straight ahead, showing no emotion. Michael collapsed into his chair, sobbing. Judge Hoffman scheduled sentencing for the following month, but her comments to the defendants left no doubt about her intentions. "This court has rarely seen such calculated exploitation of trust and vulnerability," she said. "The defendants didn't just steal money, they stole peace of mind, family bonds, and faith in the people who should provide protection and love. The sentences will reflect the gravity of these crimes." As the courtroom emptied, Dot felt a complex mix of emotions. Justice had been served, but the victory felt hollow. The family she'd loved was destroyed, her trust was shattered, and the scars would never fully heal. But she'd proven something important, that elderly people weren't helpless victims, that family relationships didn't excuse criminal behavior, and that sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing were the same thing. The trial was over, but the real work of rebuilding her life was just beginning. The sentencing hearing arrived on a gray February morning, 8 months after Dot's heart surgery and the theft that had shattered her family. Judge Hoffman's courtroom was packed again, but this time the atmosphere felt different, heavier, more final. This wasn't about determining guilt anymore. It was about deciding what justice looked like when the criminals were your own flesh and blood. Dot sat in the front row again, but now she was flanked by Jake and Sophia as well as Lisa and Ellie. The teenagers had insisted on being present, wanting to witness the consequences of their parents' choices. At 18, Jake had legally aged out of the custody system and chosen to remain with Dot. Sophia, now 15, split her time between Dot's house and her maternal aunt's home in Orlando, still struggling to reconcile her love for her parents with the magnitude of their crimes. Carmen entered the courtroom first, her orange jumpsuit replaced by a navy blue dress that couldn't disguise how prison had aged her. Her hair was completely gray now, and she'd lost at least 20 pounds. She walked with the defeated posture of someone who'd finally run out of manipulative strategies and excuses. Michael followed, looking even worse. His addiction issues had intensified during the months of legal proceedings, and he'd been in and out of treatment facilities. His lawyer had negotiated a plea deal that included mandatory rehabilitation, but the damage to his health and spirit was visible to everyone in the courtroom. Judge Hoffman called the proceedings to order with her characteristic no-nonsense authority. Before I pass sentence, I want to hear victim impact statements. Mrs. Castellano, would you like to address the court? Dot had prepared for this moment for weeks, writing and rewriting her statement until she'd distilled 8 months of pain, betrayal, and hard-won wisdom into words that mattered. She approached the podium with steady steps, her voice clear and strong when she began to speak. Your Honor, Carmen and Michael didn't just steal my money. They stole my ability to trust, my sense of family security, and my faith in the people I loved most. For 35 years as a cardiac nurse, I dedicated my life to healing and helping others. I saved every penny I could so that I would never be a burden to my family. Instead, my own family turned my careful planning into an opportunity for theft. Dot's eyes found Carmen, who was staring at her hands. Carmen, you held my hand as they wheeled me into surgery. You told me you loved me, that everything would be fine. While I fought for my life, you fought to steal everything I'd worked for. That betrayal cuts deeper than any surgical incision. She turned to Michael. Michael, you are my son. I raised you, sacrificed for you, believed in you even when others doubted. I would have given you anything if you'd simply asked. Instead, you chose to take everything when I couldn't stop you. Dot's voice grew stronger with each word. But this experience has also taught me something important. I am not a victim anymore. I am a survivor. I found strength I didn't know I possessed, discovered friends who became family, and learned that sometimes the hardest choices are the most necessary ones. I ask the court to sentence these defendants not out of vengeance, but out of justice. Other elderly people are watching this case, wondering if they too could be betrayed by the very people they trust most. Your sentences will send a message about whether our society protects its most vulnerable members or allows them to be exploited by those who claim to love them. The courtroom was silent as Dot returned to her seat. Jake squeezed her hand, his eyes bright with admiration for the woman who'd become both grandmother and moral compass in his life. Marcus Thompson spoke next, representing the financial institution's perspective. Your Honor, elder financial abuse is an epidemic in this country. Mrs. Castellano's case represents thousands of similar crimes that go unreported or unpunished. The banking industry needs the courts to send a clear message that exploiting elderly customers will result in serious consequences. Several of Michael's real estate victims also addressed the court. Sarah Martinez, the young teacher who'd lost her home down payment, spoke through tears. Mr. Castellano didn't just steal money, he stole our dream of homeownership. We trusted him with our future, and he traded it for his wife's gambling addiction. When it was time for the defendants to speak, Michael approached the podium first. His voice was barely audible, thick with shame and regret. Your Honor, there's nothing I can say that makes what I did acceptable. I stole from my own mother while she was dying. I stole from clients who trusted me with their futures. I broke every moral principle I was raised with because I was weak and scared and selfish. Michael's voice cracked completely. Mom, I know you probably can't forgive me. And I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I want you to know that I think about what I did every single day. It haunts me. The man who stole from you isn't the man you raised. and I'm trying to find my way back to being someone you could be proud of again." He turned to his children. "Jake, Sophia, I failed you as a father. I taught you that family came first, but then I showed you that meant we could hurt the people who loved us most. I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry." Carmen's statement was different, less remorseful, more focused on explanation and mitigation. She spoke about her gambling addiction as a disease, about the pressure she felt to maintain their lifestyle, about the fear of losing everything. But her words felt rehearsed, calculated to generate sympathy rather than express genuine remorse. "I never meant to hurt Dot," she concluded. "I love her like my own mother. I made terrible decisions because of my addiction, but I always intended to pay the money back." Judge Hoffman's expression remained stern throughout Carmen's statement. When both defendants had finished, she delivered her sentences with the gravity the crimes deserved. "Carmen Castellano, your crimes show a level of premeditation and exploitation that this court finds particularly disturbing. You targeted an elderly woman during her most vulnerable moment, systematically stole her life savings, and then attempted to manipulate this court with false claims of remorse and mental illness. I sentence you to 8 years in state prison, with mandatory restitution of $187,000 plus interest and court costs." Carmen's face went white. Her attorney had hoped for 3 years with the possibility of early parole. "Michael Castellano, while your crimes were committed in conjunction with your wife's, your betrayal of your own mother shows a moral failure that cannot be overlooked. You violated the trust of both family members and business clients. I sentence you to 5 years in state prison, with mandatory rehabilitation programming and restitution to all victims." The gavel's bang echoed through the courtroom with finality. Carmen and Michael were led away in handcuffs, their children watching from the gallery with expressions of profound sadness, but also, Dot noticed, a sense of closure. In the months that followed, Dot began the slow process of rebuilding her life. The restitution payments would take years to complete, and she'd never recover everything that was stolen. But insurance settlements and the sale of Carmen and Michael's house helped restore some of her financial security. More importantly, she discovered purposes she'd never imagined. The Florida Department of Elder Affairs invited her to join their advisory board. She began speaking at conferences about financial abuse prevention, her story resonating with audiences across the country. "The hardest part," she would tell these audiences, "isn't the money they stole, it's learning to trust again. But I've discovered that some people earn that trust, and some people prove they never deserved it in the first place." Jake thrived under Dot's guidance, graduating high school with honors and receiving a scholarship to study criminal justice at the University of Florida. His experience with his parents' crimes had crystallized his desire to work in law enforcement, specifically helping victims of financial crimes. "I want to be the kind of cop who actually listens to elderly victims," he told Dot as they filled out his college applications. "Someone who understands that family relationships don't excuse criminal behavior." Sophia's journey was more difficult. At 15, she was still processing the trauma of her parents' imprisonment and her family's dissolution. She spent weekends with Dot but lived primarily with her aunt in Orlando, attending therapy twice a week and slowly rebuilding her sense of security. "Do you think Dad really meant it when he said he was sorry?" she asked Dot during one of their Saturday morning breakfast conversations. "I think your father is genuinely remorseful," Dot replied carefully. "But being sorry isn't the same as being changed. Actions matter more than words, and it's going to take years for him to prove he's different." "What about Mom?" Dot paused, considering her words. "Your mother is sorry she got caught. She's sorry there were consequences. Whether she's sorry for what she actually did, I'm not sure she's capable of that kind of honesty with herself." 1 year after the sentencing, Dot received her first letter from Michael in prison. It was different from his courtroom apology, raw, more honest, less performed for an audience. "Mom," it began, "I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness because I know I don't deserve it. I'm writing because I want you to know that I'm finally getting real help. Not just addiction treatment, but therapy, to understand why I was willing to hurt the person who loved me most." The letter continued for 3 pages, detailing his daily routine, his work in the prison library, his participation in a victim impact program. "I know I can't undo what I did," he concluded, "but I'm trying to become someone who would never do it again." Someone you could be proud of, even if you can never trust me again. Dot read the letter twice, then filed it away. She wasn't ready to respond, might never be ready. But something in Michael's words felt different. Less manipulative, more genuinely broken and seeking to heal. Carmen, by contrast, had written multiple letters filled with justifications, blame-shifting, and requests for Dot to help with her appeal. Dot had stopped reading them after the third one, eventually instructing the prison to stop forwarding Carmen's mail entirely. On the second anniversary of her heart surgery, Dot hosted a small celebration at her home. Lisa flew in from Atlanta, bringing her new boyfriend and exciting news about a partnership track at her law firm. Ellie brought homemade cake and gossip from the retirement community. Jake and Sophia were there, along with Detective Gutierrez and Marcus Thompson, the allies who'd helped her seek justice. 2 years ago, I thought my life was ending, Dot said as they gathered around her dining room table. I thought family meant accepting whatever people did to you because blood was thicker than water, but I learned something important. Family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about people who choose to love and protect each other, who show up when things get difficult, who celebrate your victories and support you through your failures. She looked around the table at these people who'd become her chosen family. Carmen and Michael taught me that trust has to be earned and can be lost. But all of you taught me that it can also be rebuilt with the right people. Jake raised his glass of sweet tea. To Grandma Dot, who showed us that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is refuse to be a victim. As they toasted, Dot felt a peace she hadn't experienced since before Tony's death. The money would never be fully recovered, the family relationships would never be repaired, and the scars would always remain. But she'd survived. More than that, she'd reclaimed her power, protected other potential victims, and built something beautiful from the wreckage of betrayal. The woman who'd awakened in that hospital bed to discover her life savings stolen was gone. In her place was someone stronger, wiser, and surrounded by people who'd proven themselves worthy of trust. It wasn't the life she'd planned, but it was a life with meaning, purpose, and genuine love. And sometimes, Dot reflected as she watched her chosen family laugh and share stories around her table, that was worth more than any amount of money Carmen and Michael could have stolen. 2 years had passed since Dorothy Castellano first woke up in a hospital bed to discover her life savings had been stolen. Now, on a warm September morning in Coral Springs, she stood before a mirror in her bedroom, adjusting the collar of her navy blue blazer. Today marked another milestone in her unexpected second act. She was being honored by the Florida Department of Elder Affairs as their Advocate of the Year. The woman looking back at her had changed dramatically from the trusting widow who'd given Carmen power of attorney. Her silver hair was styled with confidence, her posture straighter despite her 70 years, and her eyes held a steely determination that came from surviving the unsurvivable and choosing to thrive rather than merely endure. You ready for your big day, Grandma Dot? Jake called from the kitchen, where the smell of coffee and bacon announced he was making his famous Saturday morning breakfast. At 20, Jake had grown into a young man who carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who'd faced hard truths early and emerged stronger. His junior year at the University of Florida was going well, his grades in criminal justice courses reflecting both natural aptitude and deep personal motivation. Almost, Dot called back, reaching for the small jewelry box on her dresser. Inside lay Tony's wedding ring, which she'd taken to wearing on a chain around her neck during important occasions. Today felt like a day when she needed his strength close to her heart. Sophia emerged from the guest room, looking more like her old self than she had in months. At 17, she was finally beginning to heal from the trauma of her parents' crimes. The weekly therapy sessions had helped, but more importantly, she'd found her own way to process the betrayal, through writing. Her essay about growing up with incarcerated parents had won a statewide high school journalism contest and earned her early admission to several universities. I still can't believe they're giving you an award, Sophia said, hugging Dot tightly. I mean, I can believe it, because you deserve it. But it's amazing how something so terrible turned into something so important. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us become the foundation for the best things we do, Dot replied, a lesson she'd learned through painful experience. The doorbell chimed and Ellie's voice carried through the house. The car service is here, and I brought pastries from that new bakery. At 74, Ellie had become Dot's closest confidant and partner in their informal elder advocacy work. What had started as neighborhood support had evolved into a formalized organization, the Coral Springs Senior Protection Network, that provided education, support, and resources for elderly residents facing financial exploitation. Lisa arrived minutes later, having flown in from Atlanta specifically for the ceremony. At 42, she'd recently made partner at her law firm and was engaged to a fellow attorney who understood and supported her fierce devotion to her stepmother. I brought someone with me, Lisa announced, stepping aside to reveal Marcus Thompson, dressed in his best suit and carrying a bouquet of flowers. Marcus! Dot exclaimed, genuinely surprised. I didn't know you were coming. Wouldn't miss it, he said, his smile warm with friendship that had deepened over 2 years of working together on financial safety initiatives. Besides, someone needs to represent the banking community when our favorite customer gets honored for keeping us all on our toes. The relationship between Dot and Marcus had evolved into something neither had expected. A deep friendship built on mutual respect and shared purpose. He'd been instrumental in helping her establish new security protocols for her accounts, and had become a regular volunteer speaker at their community education events. The drive to Tallahassee gave them time to catch up and reflect. Jake sat in the front seat, animatedly discussing his internship plans with the state attorney's office. Sophia worked on homework in the back, her acceptance letter to the University of Florida's journalism program tucked safely in her backpack, a future she was building on her own terms, independent of her parents' legacy of crime. Have you thought about what you're going to say in your speech? Lisa asked as they passed through small Florida towns, dotted with palm trees and retirement communities. I've been thinking about it for weeks, Dot admitted. How do you summarize everything that's happened, everything we've learned, in a way that actually helps people? Just tell the truth, Ellie advised. That's what you've always done, and it's what made the difference. The ceremony was held in the rotunda of the Florida State Capitol, a grand space that made Dot feel both honored and slightly overwhelmed. Representatives from elder advocacy groups across the state had gathered, along with legislators, law enforcement officials, and families who'd been affected by financial exploitation. Detective Rosa Gutierrez was there, now promoted to sergeant and heading the department's elder abuse unit. She'd become a regular collaborator with Dot's advocacy work, often speaking at their educational seminars about recognizing and reporting financial crimes. Mrs. Castellano, Gutierrez said, approaching with a smile, I wanted you to know, the protocols we developed based on your case have been adopted by 6 other counties. We're seeing earlier detection and better prosecution rates for elder financial abuse. That's exactly what Tony would have wanted, Dot replied, touching the ring at her throat. For something good to come from something so painful. As the ceremony began, Dot found herself thinking about the long journey that had brought her to this moment. The theft that had devastated her had also revealed reserves of strength she'd never known she possessed. The family that had betrayed her had been replaced by a chosen family bound by trust, respect, and genuine care. When her name was called, Dot walked to the podium with steady steps, looking out at an audience that included some of the most powerful people in Florida's government and advocacy community. But her eyes found her real family first. Jake and Sophia beaming with pride, Lisa wiping away tears, Ellie giving her an encouraging thumbs up, Marcus nodding with warm support. Thank you for this incredible honor, Dot began, her voice carrying clearly through the rotunda. 2 years ago, I was a victim. I was a 70-year-old widow lying unconscious in a hospital bed, while my own family systematically stole everything I'd spent a lifetime saving. I woke up to discover that the people I trusted most had betrayed me in the most devastating way possible. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. I had a choice to make. I could accept what had happened, chalk it up to family loyalty, and try to rebuild quietly. Many people advised me to do exactly that. They said prosecuting my own son and daughter-in-law would destroy what was left of our family, that I should prioritize forgiveness over justice. Dot's voice grew stronger, but I realized that silence in the face of crime isn't forgiveness. It's enablement. By refusing to hold my family accountable, I wouldn't be protecting them. I'd be protecting their ability to victimize others. And I'd be sending a message to every other elderly person in Florida that their financial security, their life's work, their careful planning for retirement, none of it mattered as much as maintaining family harmony. She paused, letting her words sink in. So I chose justice over comfort. I chose truth over peace. I chose to fight for every elderly person who's ever been told to, quote, keep family business private, while their life savings disappear. The investigation revealed that my case wasn't isolated. My son had been embezzling from real estate clients. My daughter-in-law had been systematically exploiting my trust for months. By speaking up, by refusing to be a silent victim, we uncovered a pattern of crimes that had hurt many families. Dot looked directly at the legislators in the audience. Elder financial abuse is an epidemic in our state. Every year, thousands of older Floridians lose billions of dollars to family members, caregivers, and others who exploit their trust. But this isn't just about money. It's about dignity, independence, and the right to age without fear of exploitation. The education programs we've developed, the banking protocols we've implemented, the support networks we've created, all of this started because one elderly woman refused to be a silent victim. But it's grown because communities across Florida have recognized that protecting our elders isn't just good policy, it's a moral imperative. Dot's voice became more personal. I've learned that family isn't defined by blood or obligation. Family is defined by love, respect, and the willingness to protect each other. The people who stole from me weren't family. They were predators who happened to share my DNA. But the people who helped me seek justice, who supported me through the hardest moments, who celebrated my recovery and my advocacy, they became my real family. She gestured toward her section of the audience. My stepson Jake, who chose justice over loyalty to parents who'd betrayed their values. My stepdaughter Lisa, who flew across the country repeatedly to support me. My neighbor Ellie, who became the sister I'd never had. Detective Gutierrez, who treated my case with the seriousness it deserved. Marcus Thompson, who could have easily dismissed suspicious transactions but instead chose to protect a customer. These people showed me what real family looks like. To the elderly residents of Florida, I want you to know that you are not powerless. You have rights, you have value, and you deserve protection. If someone is exploiting your trust, even if they're family, especially if they're family, speak up, report it. Fight back. You are not alone. To the family members and caregivers listening, I want you to understand that love doesn't entitle you to someone else's assets. Care doesn't give you the right to financial exploitation. If you're struggling financially, ask for help. Don't steal it. If you're managing someone else's affairs, do it with transparency and accountability. Trust is a privilege that must be earned and maintained, not a right that comes with blood relation. Dot's voice rose with passion. And to the legislators and law enforcement officials here today, I want you to know that your work matters. Every law you pass protecting elderly financial security, every case you prosecute, every protocol you implement, you're not just protecting money, you're protecting the dignity and independence of people who've spent their lives contributing to our communities. I didn't ask to become an advocate. I became one because the alternative was accepting victimization. And I refused to do that. I became one because I realized that my experience, as painful as it was, could help protect others from similar betrayal. We've made progress, but we have much more work to do. Every elderly person in Florida should be able to age with dignity, security, and confidence that their life's work won't be stolen by those who claim to love them. That's the Florida I'm fighting for, and I hope you'll join me in that fight. The standing ovation was immediate and sustained. Dot looked out at the faces in the audience, some tearful, others determined, all clearly moved by her words. This was her purpose now, her mission born from betrayal, but dedicated to protection and justice. As she accepted the Crystal Award from the Secretary of Elder Affairs, Dot thought about the letter that had arrived just 2 days ago, Michael's 6th letter from prison. But the first one she decided to answer. His request for a visit, not to ask for forgiveness, but to discuss his plans for victim restitution programs when he was released in 18 months. She hadn't decided yet whether to see him. The anger had faded, replaced by something more complex. Sadness for the son she'd raised, disappointment in the man he'd become, and cautious hope for the person he might yet prove himself to be. Forgiveness wasn't the same as reconciliation, and she was still learning the difference. Carmen, on the other hand, remained unrepentant in her letters, still blaming her addiction, still minimizing her crimes, still trying to manipulate from her prison cell. Those letters went straight into the trash now, unread. Some people, Dot had learned, simply weren't capable of the kind of honesty that real change required. The reception after the ceremony was filled with warm conversations and new connections. Dot found herself surrounded by advocates, legislators, and fellow survivors, all sharing stories and strategies for protecting Florida's elderly residents. Mrs. Castellano, a young woman, approached with a notebook. "I'm Sarah Chen, the prosecutor who handled your case. I wanted you to know that your case has become a training example for our office. The conviction rate for elder financial abuse has increased 30% since we started using your case to train prosecutors on the importance of taking these crimes seriously." "That's exactly what we hoped for," Dot replied, shaking Chen's hand warmly. A man in his 80s approached next, leaning heavily on a cane but with alert, grateful eyes. "Ma'am, I wanted to thank you. My son was stealing from me. Little amounts at first, then bigger ones. I saw you on the news talking about speaking up, and it gave me the courage to report him. The police caught him before he could take everything." These conversations, Dot reflected, were worth every moment of pain she'd endured. Every elderly person who found the courage to report abuse, every family member who chose transparency over exploitation, every law enforcement officer who took these crimes seriously, it all mattered. As the day wound down and they prepared for the drive back to Coral Springs, Dot felt a profound sense of completion. Not because her story was over, but because she'd found her place in a larger narrative about justice, resilience, and the power of speaking truth even when it was painful. Jake loaded their bags into the car, chattering excitedly about the law enforcement professionals he'd met and the internship opportunities he was exploring. Sophia sat quietly in the back seat, working on a new essay about the ceremony for her journalism portfolio. Lisa and Ellie compared notes about expanding their advocacy programs to other communities. Marcus drove carefully through the Florida twilight, classical music playing softly on the radio. "Penny, for your thoughts," he said quietly to Dot as the others dozed or worked. "I was thinking about Tony," she said, touching the ring at her throat. "About how he always said that the worst things that happen to us either make us bitter or make us better, and it's our choice which one they do." "And which did you choose?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. "I chose better," Dot said simply. "I chose to use what happened to me to help others. I chose to build something meaningful from the wreckage of betrayal. I chose to become someone Tony would be proud of." As they pulled into Dot's driveway in Coral Springs, she looked at the small house that had become the center of so much love and purpose. The lights were on, welcoming them home to the life she'd rebuilt with intention and surrounded herself with people who'd proven themselves worthy of trust. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, another speaking engagement, another family seeking help with financial exploitation, another opportunity to turn her painful experience into protection for others. But tonight, she was content to be surrounded by her chosen family, secure in the knowledge that she'd not only survived, but had found ways to help others survive as well. The woman who'd been wheeled into surgery 2 years ago, trusting and vulnerable, was gone. In her place was someone stronger, wiser, and committed to ensuring that trust, once broken, could be rebuilt with the right people and used to protect those who needed protection most. Dorothy Castellano had learned that sometimes the greatest gift that can come from the worst betrayal is the discovery of who you really are when everything is stripped away. And who she was, it turned out, was someone who refused to be defined by what others had done to her, but rather by what she chose to do in response. It was a good life, built on solid ground, and for the first time since Tony's death, Dot knew that her best days weren't behind her. They were still being written, one act of advocacy and love at a time. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us. Quote.